today's show, we'll be digging up Halloween foodie roots to make kelkanen and soul cakes. We'll share a magic trick for blunting blood sugar spikes from potatoes, and brainstorm 2 fun, healthy snacks to share with those cute trick-or-treaters. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Oh For Sure Show, Halloween edition. We are on a journey to heal our bodies with whole food, plant-based nutrition, and along the way, learn some food history, food psychology, and a little bit of nutrition. When most people think of Halloween, a rich food tradition doesn't necessarily pop into mind, unless you count, stealing your kids' pumpkin-shaped Reese's out of their Halloween bag. But I think it's time for a Halloween cuisine revolution, because there are some rich foodie traditions to uphold. The great thing about celebrating with traditional peasant food, which is to say mostly whole foods and mostly plants, is you don't have to endure the sugar hangover or the saturated fat flu the next day. Halloween's roots can be traced back to, well, that's kind of in the eye of the beholder, because cultures all around the world have some kind of fall festival or fall solstice that they observe. Chuseok in Korea, for example, celebrated a successful fall harvest, and people would go visit the graves of their ancestors. Big party. Kikri in Finland did something similar, and right here in River City, El Dia de los Muertos. These traditions often observed this belief that during the solstice was the time when the space between the natural and the supernatural was really thin, and doors were open between the dead and the living. The North American holiday that we call Halloween can most closely be traced back to a Celtic festival called Samhain, which is spelled like this, but sounds like this. Now, Samhain was a fall festival much like the other ones that we see around the world. There would be a big bonfire, people would dress up, they'd bring gifts to each other, and they would wear animal heads or animal costumes to either ward off or fit in with the spirits. And no, I did not just buy this spider because my oldest daughter hates them, and I love to bother her. Some disguises were meant to look like evil spirits, so they would mistake you for one of their own and, pass you by. I wonder how a sexy nurse costume would fit into that plan. One of the dishes that the Celts celebrated with was colcannon, which is a simple peasant dish made with potatoes, big shock there, and kale or cabbage and butter, but with a fun twist. Little trinkets hidden in there to give the eater clues about their future. I'm thinking they probably ate the dish carefully, but also knowing humans, I'm assuming that there were some colcannon casualties along the way. So let's head to the kitchen and make whole food, plant-based colcannon. For our colcannon, we are using 4 sweet potatoes, and I'll show you how I chop those up. They're kind of weird shaped, so you kind of got to do a trick to get them all in the similar sized pieces. You can use kale or cabbage. We are going to use kale because we like that more. Now, when you're getting the kale ready, you want to make sure to go through, and any of these kind of hard stems that you find in there, you just want to take those out. You can discard them so you just have like the leafy greens of the kale. We have 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can also use vegetable broth if you're not doing olive oil. A half a cup of plant milk. We like West soy because there's nothing else in it besides soy. And your trinkets. Now, these are random trinkets that I found from around the house. Show you what we got. I got the letter L Scrabble. I got a guitar pick. This little blue thing, I found that on a walk one day. Thought that was kind of cool. Thimble, I'm pretty sure this is from a Monopoly game. Little elephant, probably from a necklace. Purple rock of some kind. And this little glass hummingbird. So we'll see what the family thinks that says about their future. And then, of course, we have our salt and pepper, which we mostly do at the table. So these are actually not that bad, but you see like this sweet potato, you got the big middle and then these kind of funky heads. You want all of the pieces to be the same size, which is not rocket science. But for these weird ones, I always just kind of cut off the weird part, and then cut these down the middle and get them on the flat side. And then I'm just trying to make the pieces like the same thickness. So now I'll do this with these 2. And get them as close as I can. We'll get that into the water so that we can get the potatoes going. Right, so we let our potatoes cook for about 15 minutes, depending on the size of your cubes. We are going to drain them and reserve some of the cooking liquid just in case we need it when we mash them up. The starches in there really help to kind of make it smooth. Okay, look at these beauties. So now we're just going to start putting everything else into the dish and mash it up. One thing that you do want to do, this is like a little trick. Kale can be kind of angry. So what you want to do is use a little bit of vegetable oil a little bit of vegetable broth or a little bit of the olive oil. We'll just put the rest on here. And you want to massage it a little bit. Just kind of get it to chillax. Like, chill out, man. You don't need to be angry, okay? So kale brings out the flavors, really softens those leaves. Just all around better deal for everybody. Oh, yeah, we don't want that in there. This is a good time to find out if you have any more of those really woody stems that you need to fish out. I know I talk a lot about potatoes and how awesome they are. They're easy to grow, they're easy to store, they're hella cheap, but they really are good for you. And one of the things that people worry about with potatoes is a spike in blood sugar. And this is a really cool trick for anyone, depending on your health status. Healthy people don't really need to worry about that. But one of the things that you can do with potatoes to blunt that blood sugar spike is just let them cool down. That's it. As potatoes cool, their starches firm up and they kind of reshape into a crystalline structure. And that moves more slowly through the digestive tract and releases more slowly into the bloodstream, blunting that blood glucose spike. And even when they're reheated, it doesn't change the structure. And if you add vinegar, it blunts it even more. So hooray for potato salad. All right, we're gonna get the rest of these Kalkinen ingredients here. Pour our plant milk in there. We like West soy because there's nothing else in it except for soy beans. No other additives or anything. And then we're just gonna mash this puppy up. Look at that beautiful bright color. Those are all those anthocyanins, antioxidants. I'm gonna just put in some crushed black pepper, add a little bit of pink salt, and the pièce de résistance, our trinkets that we found from around the house. And hopefully everybody's careful as they chew on their Kalkinen. I'm trying to decide if I'm supposed to tell them ahead of time or just let her buck and find out. It's really too bad that potatoes were sacrificed on the low-carb altar because they're very healthy. It really just depends on what you put on them and how they're prepared. I mean, hell, Penn Jillette lost 100 pounds eating a mostly potato diet. So, speaking of things being sacrificed on an altar, let's go back to the nerd corner and talk about soul cakes. I grew up being told that all of the talk about souls and death on Halloween was because it was Satan's holiday, in which witches and warlocks would kidnap children and take them into the back 40 and sacrifice them on an altar. But the spooky, scary aspect of Halloween actually goes back to a church tradition. With the spread of Christianity, many solstice celebrations slowly morphed into celebrations of saints and martyrs. And Samhain is no different. In 1837 or thereabouts, Pope Gregory IV declared November 1st All Saints' Day, and the night before All Hallows' Eve. And one of the traditions that they observed was lighting candles so that souls that were going from purgatory into, hopefully, paradise would be illuminated along the way. But this is kind of a spooky time, because what if they get stuck here and decide to live in my house and spend their afterlife hiding my car keys? Which would explain a lot. It wasn't until the 1970s and the rise of modern evangelical Christianity in the United States that Halloween kind of started to be branded as Satan's holiday. And in the height of satanic panic in the 1980s and 90s, when I was a kid, kids like me were kept home from school, and it started to become really popular for churches to throw these harvest festivals as alternatives. I remember very clearly my cousin and my uncle performing Blame It on the Rain by Milli Vanilli for a lip sync during a talent show at Rice Free Lutheran's Harvest Festival. I wonder what Pope Gregory would have thought of that. But this brings us to another awesome food tradition that's associated with Halloween: soul cakes. The practice of making and giving soul cakes is kind of an intermingling between pagan and Christian traditions, especially in Scotland. In a practice called guising, the poor or children would dress up and go from home to home, offering, singing, and dancing in exchange for soul cakes. On a side note, if you were the kid whose parents propped you up in front of the family and had you perform for everyone, what are you doing now? And how old were you when you got diagnosed with ADHD? Let me know in the comments, because I think that we could really see a trend. As Christianity spread, this custom of guising kind of turned into something where people would go door to door offering prayers for the deceased in exchange for goodies. Our version of soul cakes is going to leave you more on the guising side and less on the deceased side. So let's head back into the kitchen and make whole food plant-based soul cakes. For our whole food plant-based soul cakes, we are using 2 cups of rolled oats. You can use half a cup of any kind of whole flour, buckwheat flour, millet flour. We are going to use almond flour, so we'll put that in with our dry ingredients. And then we have 1 teaspoon of pumpkin spice. Now, one thing that we should do early on is make our flaxseed binder. So this is also called a flax egg. I have 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, and I'm just going to mix that up with some warm water. And you want to let it sit for like 5 minutes. And I usually stir it a couple times within that 5 minutes. Just kind of stir it around there. Got my itty bitty whisk, compliments of my 12-year-olds, because they wanted mini kitchen things for Christmas 2 years ago, and I use this thing all the time. So you just let it sit, and it's going to kind of form this like gelatinous glob, which does not sound, all that appealing, but it is a pretty cool scientific trick. And I'm going to preheat the oven to 375. The rest of this goes together pretty fast. So we have our dry ingredients in 1 bowl, 2 cups of rolled oats, half a cup of the almond flour. We have 1 teaspoon of pumpkin spice or an allspice mix, and then we have 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then we're going to put all of the wet ingredients in our other bowl. I'm going to go with a cup of mashed bananas because they're ready. You can see they're reaching that kind of overripe point, but you could also use a cup of unsweetened applesauce. Sometimes I'll take my plant milk that we're going to use here in a little bit, and I'll put like 2 or 3 medjool dates in the plant milk and give that a little stir in the zunzun, in the ninja. So I'm just going to mash these up into the bottom of the wet ingredient bowl, and then we'll add our other wet ingredients in there. About right. I'm going to stir this up again so you can kind of see where it's starting to get a little gelatinousy. Give that another stir and let it sit. We are also going to add half a cup of plant milk. We're going to use soy milk. We really like West soy. I think I mentioned that earlier because it's just soybeans, no additives. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1/4 to 1/2 cup of plant butter. We're going to use some all-natural peanut butter today. There might be a little extra in there because a little extra is awesome. When it comes to, this is a celebration, right? We're making soul cakes. You should probably put some extra peanut butter in there. That was a bad choice. I'm trying to talk. Cut. Okay, so we have our wet ingredients in the 1 bowl, and we have our dry ingredients in the other bowl. I'm just going to give, this comes together really fast. I'm just going to give our dried fruit a little tiny chop to make everything uniform sizes. So this is very exciting. This is one of those things, when it comes to celebrating and like what do we look forward to. We were at a farmer's market a couple weeks ago in Sioux Falls because we took our oldest daughter down there for a college visit. And one of the vendors, it was all dried fruit, all different kinds of dried fruit. And it was just the fruit, right? There wasn't any canola oil or high fructose corn syrup or anything. So we got some really cool fruits there. And I'm like excited, like thinking about soul cakes. Yay, this gets to go in soul cakes. So we have dried cherries, we have dried cranberries, golden raisins, we have some prunes and some apricots. So I'm just gonna give this a fine chop so that everything is kind of uniform size. And then we will combine everything. Okay, we are ready to combine all of our ingredients. I'm just gonna go through here and make sure that sometimes that almond flour, we keep ours in the freezer so it doesn't get rancid, but sometimes when I take it out then it kind of clumps up, so I just go through and make sure all the little pieces are broken up. And we are gonna add our wet ingredients to the dry. And then finally, we got our flax egg here. You can see that's all gloopy and ready to go. So we're gonna stir that in as well. Now it might look a little liquidy at first as far as cookies go, but remember these are rolled oats, so they're gonna soak up a lot of that moisture as it bakes. And then we just wanna fold in our dried berries, our dried fruit. That's such a cool color combination. You know, it's like cascade of fall colors. That dark maroon in there. Very cool. I mean, personally, I think you could add more. I said half a cup. I think that was more than a half a cup. I think you could easily add more dried fruit in there. Okay, so we got our baking sheet here. Got parchment paper on there. You could put this in the fridge for 15-20 minutes, let it cool down, and then it'll firm up. The thing about these soul cakes is they're not gonna spread out because there's no butter in them. So the way that they look on the pan when you put them into the oven is pretty much the way it's gonna be when it comes out. So we're just gonna form our little patties here. When we come back out of the oven, we're gonna put crosses in them to make the traditional soul cake. And we have a little bit of frosting that we are going to add on there as well. So here's what we do for a cashew medjool date sweetened frosting. We're taking a half a cup of cashews, 2 to 3 dates, 4 dates, 5 dates, depending on how sweet you want it to be. Put them in a bowl and cover them with hot water for about 10 minutes. Then you put everything into a high-powered blender and let her rip. Now at this point you can add all kinds of different flavors. You could go the cinnamon route, you can add some vanilla extract, you could add raspberries, any kind of fruit, but that will give you cashew cream frosting. And we will use that to put our crosses on top of the soul cakes when they are done. All right, our soul cakes are ready to come out of the oven. Oh my goodness, they smell so good. I know firsthand that there's an added pressure during the holidays, for parents especially, to make things fun and to kind of relax rules or ideals that you would otherwise uphold in your house and in your kitchen. It's only one day, let kids be kids, everyone needs a treat now and then, yada yada yada. And while I don't make rules for my kids about what they can and can't eat on Halloween, what they can't eat out of their baskets or whatever, I don't have rules about what we keep in the house and don't keep in the house, and I try not to talk about certain foods as like bad foods, because the research is pretty clear that that can go the opposite way and make kids have a weird relationship with food. But I will say, as someone coming from 20 years experience in the public classroom, for the love of God, I'm telling you, parents and grandparents, overloads of candy makes kids tired, crabby, and constipated. So if you could help your public school out with the candy overload on Halloween, we would all appreciate it. But for some of you, and for some of your kids, you just can't eat that way because you have a health crisis that you're facing, or you're dealing with some kind of allergy or whatever. And I'm here to tell you that this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to reframe the way that we think about celebrations, the beliefs that we have about what it means to have fun and celebrate a holiday. Being tired and crabby and constipated is not celebratory. What makes holidays fun? It's being together. It's planning what costume you're gonna wear on Halloween. It's carving out jack-o'-lanterns with the family while dancing to the Monster Mash. It's making new food traditions and eating soul cakes for the first time, and maybe we should do this next year, and what are some cool places that we could get dried fruit for the next time we make it? Those are the things that make holidays meaningful. It's time to reframe the way that we think about treats, the way that we think about celebrating. Pumpkin-shaped Reese's don't make a magical moment. What makes a magical moment is sitting around the kitchen table with the lights low and talking about your own stories from where the supernatural was really thin and that door between the afterlife and this life was maybe open more than it is on any day, maybe a little too open for comfort, right? Those are the times together that make celebration magic. That is good stuff. And we can eat as much of that as we can fit onto our plates. So let's head back into the kitchen one more time for our Quick Bites segment, where we're gonna take a look at some things that we can do, fun, healthy things to eat on Halloween night, and a couple cool treats that we can hand out for those cute little trick-or-treaters. So every week we'll be doing a segment that we call Quick Bites, where we talk about really quick snacks, really quick meals, fun little tidbits of information that we can kind of end the week with and start anew. And I gotta say, you would be amazed at what kids will eat when it has a face on it. Like, I don't know how that works. Well, I mean, that's why they make, chicken nuggets into dinosaurs or whatever. They also like biting the heads off of stuff. Do with that information what you will. I'm sure they're not little sadists or anything, but they really will. Last Friday, our twins went to one of these lock-in things, where they're at a supervised party all night, and I sent a platter of the Mandarin jack-o'-lanterns that we're gonna do here in a minute, and just a veggie tray. No dip or anything, just a veggie tray with tons of different vegetables on it. The other thing that kids will do is they'll eat stuff that's sitting out. They ate all those vegetables and they ate all of those oranges, like just because it was there, right? So one thing that's fun to do with kids, especially smaller ones, because pumpkins can be hard to carve for little kids. They're like dense, the thickest skin. You can do bell peppers instead. They're like little tiny pumpkins. They have the same shape. You could do the orange ones or the yellow ones, but I thought this was kind of fun. You just maybe plop the top off for them, and then you can get them to kind of take out the insides, which is easier with a bell pepper because they just take that out, have them get all the little ribs and the little seeds out of there. Some kids get really weirded out with the pumpkin guts, which I understand because it's very slimy. And then they can, supervised of course, and adults too, they can make their little jack-o'-lantern face in the bell pepper. I've found that the little kits that come at the grocery store and whatnot for carving pumpkins do not do a very good job at actually cutting through the pumpkin skin. Maybe I'm just getting the hardiest pumpkins on earth, but this is much easier for for kids to do. I'm going to give this guy a little smile here. That's a little kind of half smile, I guess. And then you got your little mini jack-o'-lantern. You can put the top back on there. Cutest little thing ever. The other thing that we are going to do, which was a major hit last year, I was pretty excited. We had regular candy, some of the least offensive ones, and then we just had mandarin oranges that we drew faces on, like little jack-o'-lantern faces, and the kids loved it. I had to refill the orange bin twice before we even had like half of the candy gone. So I just draw little faces on the oranges, kind of like we did with the little jack-o'-lantern. A little kind of squiggly smile there. Give it little lines. The older ones really like making the faces, which is fun. You can do that on jack-o'-lantern night. Have the younger ones who don't like touching the pumpkin guts, one of the things that they can do instead is draw faces on the mandarin oranges. Finally, one of the snacks that my students really liked when I was in the classroom is just popcorn. I mean, people like popcorn. I love popcorn. I would bathe in popcorn if I could. Okay, that's probably an overreach, but I found these cute little bags at Target. So we'll just plomp some popcorn in there. And then I also got some clear bags. So on the clear ones, you know, you could write a little inspirational note. They come with these binders for these little like bread bag ties. So we'll just put a couple handfuls of popcorn in there, and that'll be one of the things that trick-or-treaters can do too. If you need to do Halloween treats for like a kid's sports team or something, isn't that the never-ending job? This is a great option. If you are liking and getting value out of what you've seen in this episode and on Oh For Sure, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe. It really helps keep us going. I'm going this year as sushi, and Mr. Oh For Sure is going as soy sauce. What's your favorite Halloween costume ever? Let me know in the comments. And if you add a picture, I'll send you a copy of my recipe for soul cakes, you lucky duck. All this talk about death, it's worth remembering. The best way to give a middle finger to death is to eat real wholesome food. Now, I'm not afraid to die, but I don't want it to be my fault. And I love the freedom that comes with feeling good and being healthy. Join us next week for our Ode to Pumpkin as we get ready for Thanksgiving. And remember, if you're gonna drive a Cadillac, you better fill her with premium. So eat real food. Hidden trinkets in there. And whatever your trinket is, you know, says something about your future. Since I got this, it looks like I stabbed my enemies. In the eye. Oh, what does the hummingbird mean? Do you flap your wings at 80 beats per minute? Per second?
Maybe I'll be able to decide.
Do you get tired easily? Do you rely a lot on sugar?